Picture this. You're standing in your kitchen, you reach into the fruit bowl, and you grab an apple.
Right.
You take a bite. It's crisp. It's incredibly sweet. Juice is running down your chin. It feels like, I mean, the most natural, basic, everyday piece of fruit in the entire world.
Yeah.
Something that just springs from the earth, ready for you to eat. I mean, the first fruit we learn about as kids, right? A is for apple.
Exactly. Yeah.
But the sweet, perfect apple you might be chewing on right now is actually a biological anomaly.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a statistical miracle that technically shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
And it is completely dependent on centuries of, well, bizarre human engineering just to survive.
Yeah, it really is.
So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at a stack of sources that dive into the hidden, surprisingly intense, and quite frankly, incredibly quirky botany of the apple tree.
It's a lot weirder than people think.
It really is. Our mission for this deep dive is to translate this heavy botanical science for those of us who aren't biologists and to completely change how you look at that everyday fruit sitting on your kitchen counter.
What's fascinating here is that we assume an apple's sweetness is a guarantee of nature, like it's just what apples do.
Right.
But when you actually look at the genetic realities, sweetness is a highly volatile trait. I mean, it goes completely against the plant's natural default state.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Hmm.
Because to understand just how weird the apple in your kitchen is, we have to start at the very beginning of its life cycle, which is, the seed.
Yeah, the seed is where all the chaos starts.
Because I think most of us assume that if you eat a delicious, sweet apple, and you take one of those little black seeds from the core and plant it in your backyard,
you'd get the same apple.
right, you eventually get a tree that grows the exact same sweet apples.
Yeah, but no. The apple tree possesses a genome that biologists describe as being in a state of extreme heterozygosity.
Okay, wait, extreme what?
Extreme heterozygosity. So in accessible terms, it just means the apple's genetic makeup is highly complex and incredibly unstable from generation to generation.
Wow, okay.
Like, unlike a tomato or a pea plant that breeds true to type.
Which means the seeds produce offspring nearly identical to the parent.
Exactly, yeah. Unlike those, every single seed inside an apple contains an entirely unique, totally unpredictable combination of genetic material.
I want to pause on the mechanics of that because how does a plant manage to make every single seed completely different?
It's wild.
Even the seeds sitting right next to each other in the exact same apple core.
Yeah, it comes down to how the apple tree pollinates.
Okay.
Because apple blossoms almost always require cross-pollination to actually set fruit.
Right, they need a partner.
Yeah, so a bee lands on the flower of your sweet tree, but it has just flown in from miles away, and it's carrying pollen from potentially dozens of completely different wild or, crabapple trees.
Oh, wow, so it's just a massive mix.
Exactly. When that foreign pollen fertilizes the ovule, it creates this huge genetic mashup. The seed is inheriting DNA from distant ancestors and just random local trees.
So it's essentially like human genetics, but like cranked up to maximum volatility.
Oh, definitely. 2
human parents can have 5 kids and all 5 look completely different. But with apples, you are dealing with millions of possible ancestral combinations in every single seed.
Millions. And the sources lay out the statistics of this genetic lottery, and they are stark.
I bet.
Because of this extreme heterozygosity, 99.9% of the time, an apple seed will revert to its wild evolutionary trajectory.
99.9%.
Yeah, it produces what is called a wild phenotype.
I am assuming a wild phenotype is not the shiny red fruit sitting in the grocery store.
No, not at all. The natural default state of the apple is a small, dense, woody fruit.
Yikes.
It is intensely bitter, heavily loaded with tannins, or just sharply sour.
Like a crab apple.
Exactly. In horticultural circles, it's sometimes referred to as a spitter.
A spit.
Yeah, because if you take a bite, your immediate reflex is to physically spit it out.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
But wait, why would nature aggressively favor a bitter, woody fruit?
That's a great question.
You'd think sweetness would be better for survival, right? Because animals would want to eat it and spread the seeds.
You would think so, but sweetness is actually a massive metabolic luxury for a plant.
What do you mean?
Pumping a fruit full of complex sugars requires an immense amount of energy and just perfect environmental conditions.
Oh, right.
And in the rugged, mountainous regions of Central Asia, where the apple actually originated...
Survival favored the tough guys.
Exactly. It favored tough, hardy trees with dense fruit that could withstand late frosts and really harsh climates.
Okay, that makes sense.
And those bitter tannins, they act as a chemical defense against pests and rot.
Wow. So the bitterness is literally a shield.
Yeah. To nature, the spitter is the ultimate survivor. The sweet apple is just a fragile anomaly.
So basically, eating an apple is essentially like holding a handful of lottery tickets.
Yeah.
And if you plant them, 99.9% of the time, you completely lose. You get a bitter, woody, practically inedible tree.
Pretty much.
The winning ticket, the sweet apple, must be incredibly rare.
Very rare. That winning ticket is what we call the elite phenotype.
Elite phenotypes.
Got it. A large, sweet fruit with crisp flesh, but that spontaneous genetic alignment happens less than 0.1% of the time.
Less than 1 in 1,000 seeds.
Less than 1 in 1,000.
It's a complete inversion of how we think about agriculture. I mean, if nature's default is a tiny bitter apple that makes you want to spit it out,
Right.
we couldn't possibly rely on nature to supply enough sweet ones to fill even a single grocery store.
Not a chance. In a natural wild forest, a tree bearing genuine sweetness is just a mathematical disruption of the standard bitter landscape.
Wow.
If we relied on nature to simply drop seeds and grow new sweet trees, sweet apples would effectively not exist as a reliable human food source. We had to intervene.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if the seeds are essentially useless for keeping sweet apples around,
Which they are.
since they just roll the genetic dice and revert to being bitter, humans had to figure out a way to cheat the biological system.
Yeah, we had to hack it.
And ancient farmers managed to do this through grafting.
Yes, grafting.
When I was reading the mechanisms of grafting in our sources, it felt less like farming and more like, I don't know, botanical Frankenstein.
It kind of is.
We were literally amputating a piece of one tree and surgically attaching it to another.
Because the tree cannot pass desirable traits through its seeds, the continuous propagation of sweet fruit requires this direct, really sophisticated human intervention.
It's wild.
Grafting is an ancient form of clonal propagation. Every single quality apple variety you have ever eaten relies completely on this physical intervention.
Hold on. If you're taking a branch from a delicate sweet tree
Yeah.
and just shoving it into the stump of a tough wild tree,
Yeah.
why doesn't the wild tree just reject it?
Well,
Because in humans, if you transplant an organ, the body's immune system immediately attacks the foreign tissue. How does the tree just accept a biological invader?
it's because plants lack the adaptive immune systems found in animals.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they don't produce white blood cells or antibodies to attack foreign cellular structures.
Okay, that makes things easier.
Much easier. The secret to a successful graft actually lies in a microscopic layer of cells called the vascular cambium.
The cambium, okay, that's the wet green layer just underneath the bark, right?
Oh, that is the cambium. It is a very thin cylinder of actively dividing cells responsible for the secondary growth of roots and stems.
Okay, so how does the surgery work?
So, a horticulturist finds that rare 1 in 1,000 sweet tree, the elite phenotype.
The lottery winner.
Exactly. They cut a living bud or shoot from it, which is called the scion.
Scion, okay.
They then cut into a hardy, wild root system already in the ground, which is the rootstock.
Right.
The surgery requires perfectly aligning the cambium layer of the sweet scion with the cambium layer of the bitter rootstock.
Wow. You were essentially lining up the microscopic veins of two completely different organisms.
Yes. Once aligned and tightly bound, the plant's natural healing response takes over.
It just fuses.
Yeah, undifferentiated cells, called callus tissue, form at the wound site, bridging the gap. The vascular systems literally merge.
That is incredible.
The xylem channels, which transport water and minerals, and the phloem channels, which transport sugars, they just fuse together.
So the roots belong to a bitter tree, pulling up water and nutrients from the soil.
Right.
And pumping them directly into the circulatory system of branches and leaves that belong to a completely different sweet tree.
Precisely.
It's a forced biological marriage to trick a bitter root system into sustaining a sweet canopy.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the historical and philosophical weight of this mechanism is staggering.
How so?
In botanical terms, the sweetness of an apple is not a natural inheritance of the soil it grows in. It's not an inheritance of the seed.
Right, because the seed is a wild card.
Exactly. Sweetness is a meticulously preserved, deliberately transferred lineage.
Meaning, every single Honeycrisp, Gala, or Fuji apple we eat today is just a clone of the very first tree of that variety.
An unbroken chain of cloned cells stretched across continents and centuries.
That is mind-blowing.
And it is maintained strictly through active human care.
So, what happens if we stop?
If farmers stopped grafting, if they stopped physically cutting and lining up the cambium layers of these trees, the orchards would simply drop their seeds.
And we know what happens with the sieves.
Yeah, those seeds would grow into the 99.9% wild phenotype. The entire orchard would slip back into absolute bitterness within a single generation.
Our relationship with the sweet apple isn't just us passively harvesting what nature provides. We're sustaining it on life support through this ancient surgical technique.
Life support is a great way to put it.
It completely changes how I view an orchard. I mean, it's not a wild forest. It's a meticulously curated gallery of clones.
Yeah, the human hand is entirely responsible for preserving the sweetness of the apple on the branch. But once that human hand severs the apple from the tree, the fruit relies on its own built-in, highly unusual survival mechanisms to last as long as it does on your counter.
Wait, if the fruit is so incredibly resilient on my counter, just hoarding energy, what is the actual tree doing outside while the fruit is surviving inside?
Oh, they have very different strategies.
Let's talk about the fruit first,
Right.
because we've established how humans rescue the sweet apple on the tree, but the apple's own biology after it's picked is fascinating.
It really is.
Our sources note that apples are climacteric fruits.
Yes. Climacteric fruits undergo a distinct dramatic ripening phase driven by a cascade of ethylene gas.
Ethylene.
Yeah, ethylene is a gaseous plant hormone. When an apple reaches maturity, it begins synthesizing ethylene, which diffuses through the plant tissues and binds to specific cellular receptors.
Okay, I want to understand how a gas actually makes a fruit sweet.
Yeah.
What is that ethylene hormone physically doing inside the apple?
The ethylene triggers the transcription of genes that produce specific enzymes.
Okay, enzymes. Doing what?
These enzymes get to work breaking down complex, tasteless starches stored in the fruit and converting them into simple sugars like fructose and sucrose.
Oh, so it's literally unlocking the sweetness.
Exactly. At the same time, other enzymes break down the pectin in the cell walls, softening the flesh.
Right, taking it from rock hard to crisp.
Yeah, while chlorophyll degrades, changing the skin color from green to red or yellow.
What really stood out to me in the sources is the comparison between the apple's metabolism and other climacteric fruits, like the apricot or the pear.
Oh, night and day difference.
Because, honestly, if you leave a pear on the counter, it feels like it's perfectly ripe for about 12 minutes before it turns to mush.
It's true. Pears and apricots have extremely rapid post-harvest respiration rates.
Respiration like breathing.
Sort of. Respiration is the process where the fruit takes in oxygen and breaks down its stored sugars to release energy, keeping its cells alive.
Okay.
Those fruits consume their own internal resources furiously once they are severed from the branch.
I think of the pear as the fruit that just parties too hard.
That's hilarious.
Like, it gets picked, it celebrates by burning all its energy at once, it gets super sweet and soft, and then 2 days later, its metabolic bank account is overdrawn and it's completely rotting.
That is exactly what happens, but the apple is a doomsday prepper.
A doomsday prepper. I love that.
The apple operates under a highly conservative metabolic strategy. Compared to those rapidly perishable fruits, the post-harvest respiration rate of the apple is exceptionally slow.
So it's just sipping its energy.
Right. It effectively hoards its internal sugars and its moisture. It meters out its stored energy in minute, highly regulated doses.
And it has a physical defense mechanism to help trap that respiration, right?
It does.
The cuticle on the skin. Because if you've ever bought a shiny apple at the store and, rubbed it on your shirt to polish it,
Yeah, everyone does that.
you've actually interacted with that exact biological defense mechanism.
The waxy cuticle is crucial. It is a complex layer of lipids and hydrocarbon polymers secreted by the epidermal cells of the fruit.
So it's literally wax.
Yeah, natural wax. This cuticle acts as a highly effective hydrophobic barrier.
Meaning it repels water.
Exactly. It dramatically slows down the rate of transpiration, which is the loss of water vapor, and it regulates the diffusion of gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide.
So when you rub it, you're touching the shield that keeps its respiration rate at a crawl.
Precisely. Because of this slow cellular burning and the waxy seal, the fruit can maintain its structural rigidity, its crispness, and its nutritional value for months after being detached from the tree.
Just sitting there, totally disconnected from a water source, rationing its energy.
Historically, long before the invention of artificial refrigeration, this conservative metabolism made the apple an invaluable food source.
Oh, I bet. You could just keep them all winter.
Exactly. It was one of the few fresh, nutrient-dense foods that could be stored in a dark root cellar throughout the long, barren parts of the year without decaying into mush.
Which Perfectly brings me back to my earlier thought.
Yeah.
If the fruit is down in the cellar surviving the winter with this doomsday metabolism,
Right.
what is the actual tree doing outside in the snow? We've talked about the seed, the grafting surgery, and the fruit on the counter.
The whole journey.
But how does the physical tree survive standing out in the middle of a blizzard?
The apple tree possesses a profound physiological tolerance for extreme thermal shifts.
Like, it just handles it.
It doesn't just endure the winter cold, it actively requires it.
Wait, requires it?
Yeah, as autumn transitions to winter, the tree enters a state of deep dormancy, a winter torpor.
I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that. Freezing burst cells.
Usually, yes.
We see it all the time when delicate plants get hit by a frost, Their leaves turn black and die because ice crystals physically shatter the cellular walls.
Right, that's what typically happens.
So how can a massive biological entity survive sub-zero trauma, let alone sit in it for months?
The tree executes a brilliant piece of biochemical engineering.
Okay, I'm listening.
As temperatures drop, it moves water out of its cells and pumps high concentrations of sugars and specialized proteins into the cellular fluid.
Sugars and proteins.
These sugars act identically to the antifreeze you put in your car's radiator.
Wow. It's literally brewing its own antifreeze to protect the cambium layer and the vascular tissue.
Exactly. This process, known as supercooling, prevents the internal cellular fluid from forming sharp ice crystals even when the ambient temperature drops well below the freezing point of pure water.
That is so smart.
The wood stays viable.
So what does this all mean? We normally associate fruit trees with sunshine and warmth, but the apple tree actually needs the cold.
It does.
It's like a cold weather adrenaline junkie.
This raises an important question about how we view environmental conditions.
How do you mean?
We often think of harsh winter colds as an obstacle that a living thing must overcome or suffer through.
Yeah, like it's a punishment.
Right. But for the apple tree, the cold is a biological trigger.
The sources mention it tracking the cold. But how does a tree track time and temperature without a brain or a nervous system?
Its internal biological clock operates on hormonal degradation.
Hormonal degradation, okay.
In the fall, the tree produces high levels of growth-inhibiting hormones to force itself into dormancy.
To put itself to sleep.
Exactly. But those specific hormones are highly unstable at low temperatures.
Oh.
Botanists refer to the requirement to break them down as chilling hours.
So the cold is actively destroying the chemical locks that keep the tree asleep.
Exactly the mechanism at play. The tree requires a specific threshold of temperatures, typically between 32 and 45 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
As the tree accumulates hundreds of these chilling hours, the growth inhibitors slowly degrade.
And if it doesn't get cold enough?
Without enough cold to destroy those inhibitors during the deep winter torpor, the tree cannot trigger its springtime flowering.
Wow. If the tree doesn't freeze enough, it just refuses to bloom.
The bloom will be so erratic and weak that fruit production fails entirely.
That is wild.
The depths of winter, the sub-zero frost, is a biological necessity for its future fertility. It requires the trauma of the cold to produce the life of the spring.
It perfectly encapsulates just how quirky and resilient this entire species is.
It's an amazing plant.
I mean, it thrives on being frozen. Its seeds are a wild genetic gamble that almost always result in a bitter spitter. Its branches have to be surgically spliced onto foreign roots just to keep the sweet varieties alive.
Yep.
And the fruit itself uses a doomsday metabolism and a waxy shield to stay crisp for months.
When you synthesize all the cellular mechanisms, it paints a picture of a species that is far more complex than the simple pastoral image we typically associate with an orchard.
So, to recap this journey for everyone listening, we started with the genetic chaos of extreme heterozygosity in the bitter wild seed.
Right?
We explored the ancient surgical rescue mission of cambium grafting to bypass that seed.
Yep.
We looked at the ethylene-driven doomsday metabolism that keeps the fruit crisp.
And finally, the tree's biochemical antifreeze, an absolute requirement for freezing winter temperatures just to reproduce. There is one final lingering implication from all of this source material that we haven't touched on yet.
Oh, what is...
And it's really worth mulling over. We established that every single Gala, Granny Smith, or Honeycrisp in the world is a clone, propagated through grafting.
Right. They are exact copies.
Because they are exact genetic copies of one another, they share the exact same immune system vulnerabilities.
Oh, wow. Because we bypassed the genetic lottery of the seed, we entirely removed genetic diversity from the orchard.
We built a global food supply on monocultures.
That sounds dangerous.
It is. If a newly mutated fungus, a targeted disease, or a highly adaptive pest emerges that specifically attacks the genetic profile of the honeycrisp, for example.
It wouldn't just kill a few trees.
Without genetic variation to serve as a natural firewall, it could potentially wipe out the entire global supply of that variety in a matter of years.
Man, the very surgical intervention that gives us the perfect sweet apple is also the exact thing that makes our entire apple supply incredibly fragile.
It's a double-edged sword.
So the next time you are standing in your kitchen and you reach into that fruit bowl and rub an apple on your shirt,
Think about the clones.
you aren't just eating a simple piece of fruit. You are tasting a mathematical miracle, a clone survivor sustained by centuries of human intervention, constantly walking a tightrope between genetic chaos and global vulnerability.
Beautifully said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the everyday things around you, and we'll catch you next time.